Welcome back to the channel. This is the Casuals. I'm Jin,
And I'm Saki.
and today's episode is Anime Talks. And today as indicated by the thumbnail, and we've also indicated in previous episodes that we would talk about this. It's about Shokugeki no Soma or Food Wars. Um, and so I guess this one's a little bit weird because not weird, but like interesting because you had actually watched this anime before, um, prior to us watching it together.
Yeah, years ago. I don't remember how long, but I think I only got through, honestly, like 5 or 6 episodes.
Let's see. Shokugeki no Soma came out, and I think the animation came out in 2015. I think. Yes, it came out in 2015. So that was over 7 years ago.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember the exact time I watched it. I just remember I watched like I said, maybe 5 or 6 episodes, I think it was.
Yeah. Um, as you know, with any anime talk that we have, spoiler alert. If you for some reason haven't watched it yet, which is I guess kind of strange because since this anime is so old now. It revolves around a boy. He is a boy. I think 15 years old in junior high, whatever. He helps out his dad in the restaurant, and he's a pretty good cook. Um, and you know, immediately we are exposed to his antics. um, the peanut butter. This was it the squid coated in peanut butter.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
And that's exactly what he was going for. But the following scene right after was truly the thing that you actually remember the food anime about. Remember for what it was about.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of hard to describe, but let's just say there's a lot of nakedness and peanut butter tentacles that followed that scene. And so, uh, to I guess give an overarching theme or premise is that Shokugeki no Soma or Food Wars has a lot of
That.
interesting scenes.
It has a lot of that. We should just say and leave
Yeah,
it there.
it has a lot of that, especially when they try out food, and a lot of them are entertaining, and some of them are really weird, but uh, you know, disregarding those that. I guess we'll go with the overall for now, or like the I guess like our impressions. What did you actually think about like the story?
I actually enjoyed the story. The interesting parts were just like extra like goodness for me. I thought it was funny, but I don't know. I don't know how it is to some other people, but I thought it was just hilarious.
What I thought was awesome about that, because I had also watched it prior, but again I hadn't watched it in so long that it's practically rewatching the entire thing. Um, what I thought was so cool about Chokugeki no Soma or Food Wars was its storytelling was essentially like any other typical, I guess what you would call this category of shonen, right? It's this very style, like story type. It's a story type in Japanese, like I guess manga. There's all different types of variations or styles, and shonen is like kind of like the young protagonist that goes on an adventure, right? Um, Typically, these are associated with like fantasy. Uh, you usually see it in fantasy type settings because it's more heavily reliant on the adventure aspect of it, or what's it called, science fiction type things like superpowers. Um,
Hmm.
so you usually see it in that, but this one Shokugeki no Soba or Food Wars very basically follows that same type of archetype of a shonen series where this young man or young boy, I guess, teenager, goes on a journey and kind of like battles other people, right? And he grows from it. Um, and you know during 2015 when the anime came out, and even earlier than that, I think around 2013 when the manga first started actually publishing, the concept itself was really new. No one, there's nothing that was ever really like it. There might have been like similarities in terms of like cooking manga or anime that had competitions between people, but that wasn't the main focus. It was merely just more like actual, just going like just character just cooking type thing. Um, but this one was more like direct, competition, one versus one type deal, and so I thought it was very fascinating when I first read it, and I was really hooked onto it, just reading it constantly. And so I had really enjoyed reading it. And I know you, Saki, you typically take storytelling seriously. You do usually focus more on the story. So what was that like for you when you started to see like that story progression you know happen?
I was actually kind of impressed with the story progression. It wasn't really stalled out, like there wasn't enough content, so they were just like, oh, here's a bunch of random filler episodes or anything. Like it progressed a little bit like each episode, which I liked, but not like it just tried to just shoot like through too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Progress the story. It was like at a steady pace. That's more of a better way to say it. I'd say it was more of a steady pace for it, and then because it was easier to follow, I should say, like that way. I
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
like if
yeah.
they tried to go too fast, people, I mean, they probably still enjoy it, but they probably wouldn't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I don't know, for me, story progression, like consistent story progression, I guess, is a huge plus for me because it's easier to follow, especially because, I'm not a huge anime watcher. And so it takes, a little bit of time for me to like grasp what's happening because we do use the subtitles so I can like quickly read it and try to like I guess figure out what's happening in my head really quick as it's going so I can keep up with the pace.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I appreciate that part of it at least.
And I think another interesting part is that it's set in almost like familiar world, I guess, right? Where it is still a very foreign concept, right? In terms of like food battles and like this whole like people who are students who are like, reminder, these guys in the anime, like manga and anime, they're like teenagers. They're literal teenagers of the ages of like 15 through like 18, right? So, and they're pulling out some like avant-garde like stuff in their world. And if you were to try and compare that to reality, that's very rare. Like very rarely are there even like 15, 16 years old that are able to cook on such a high level, um, and you know be able to consistently do that. There's just very rarely anyone because and the only time that really shows is if they're cooking at a young age, um, and constantly cooking, throughout their whole lives. Which, fair case in point, the main character Soma is exactly that, archetype, I guess, right?
Yeah, I do want to throw in a thing. Don't believe in these like reality cooking shows like with the children that are like competing, I guess.
Oh, like
That's
what's it
a bunch
called?
of crap.
Like what was it? Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen, I think it was called.
No, that one was like actual like full grown like
There was a
not
children version,
professional
right?
chefs, but it was I think Master Chef Kids or
Oh,
something.
MasterChef. That's what the series was called.
That
Yeah,
one is a bunch.
MasterChef.
That one is crap. They're like, "Oh yeah, I know how to do all this." I'm like, "Yeah, you were probably given the recipe like 30 minutes before you were supposed to do it." And then the kids are like, they're like, I think from like 8 to 12 or something, not teenagers. So it's like 8 to 12.
Yeah.
I remember one of the episodes. This is kind of a random side tangent, but the one of the children that she was like 8, and she's like, yeah, I've been cooking since I was 2. I'm like, yeah, your mom probably let you hold a spoon. That's about as much as you got. Like, come on, let's be real here. She would not give a 2-year-old a sharp knife to start cooking. Let's be real.
Well,
That just got on my nerves. I'm like, it's obviously like scripted and fake, but it's just like, come on, really? A 2-year-old?
my counterpoint to a mom giving her 2-year-old a knife. There are probably parents like that in the world, just not with the intent to actually, have them cook. They're just, it's more like an actual carelessness. Um, but yeah, like obviously that situation where like I've been cooking since I was 2 years old, like Saki said, ain't no way that's happening.
Yeah, your parents let you like hold the spoon or like said, here, take this like bowl and like move it from this counter to the table. Like that's about as far as cooking wise you got. Like, come on. Let's let's not be ridiculous here. And it was like that for like a lot of them. They're like, "Oh yeah, like I'm like a professional. I know how to do this." I'm like, "You probably don't even know what the hell you're saying, first of all."
I think if I'm correct, there was only one contestant, like in the MasterChef Children, right? There was only one contestant who actually looked like he knew how to cook, and he actually has and I am correct, he has actually continuously cooked and has an actual career in like high end restaurants now. But that is like only one out of hundreds.
Yeah.
So, you know, just like bear in mind as in terms of reality that just does not exist. But it's fine in anime because that's the whole point of anime and manga. It's supposed to be fictitious. It's not supposed to be realistic. Realism is nice, but like it is an outlet for creativity, I guess, right? Or for situations that shouldn't normally happen to be presented in a like more like a what if scenario. Like in this case, which was really interesting, what if you have an elite cooking school that is really cutthroat survival of the fittest? And that's exactly what the concept came about, and it's really interesting. Which I do that, which is kind of like the next point I want to get to. What did you think about that concept of having like that kind of elite school cooking where it is truly cutthroat and it's like the weak are discarded and they're truly made for fodder in order to improve the best? Because real cooking schools, there are cooking schools, but they don't function like that.
That is true. I did like that concept. Like, yeah, it's a little rough. Like, hey, you're not suited for this. Like, you're not good enough yet. So you're kind of like cut from the program thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did think that was honestly, pretty true. Like, that goes for like anything. Like, if you're trying to, let's say, get into Harvard or something, and you're just like a average grade student, but you want to pursue like academics, they're like, oh, sorry, like there's other people that we believe, are, I don't want to be rude, but like smarter, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have to decline your application, kind of thing. Yeah, that's kind of real.
Yeah.
People get rejected all the time. So I did kind of like that realist part of it. Because, yeah, like, you want the best of the best. That's why they're elite, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, you want for, like, the not as qualified people.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to make this sound a little bit better than just calling them, you know, something bad. But the not as qualified people, like, maybe they come back or something in a
Yeah.
couple years. Get some experience or, mature and, like, grow a little bit. And
Yeah.
then come back. That'd be kind of cool. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen the whole anime, but like maybe in a later season, like after, let's say, like that Soma like stays within the school or something, like
Mm-hmm.
in the high, like the what is it, the Elite 10
Yeah.
needed or something like that, right? Let's say he's like that. He's in there, and then like he sees some of those people that got cut or like ran away because they
Mm-hmm.
weren't good enough. I'd like to see that, like see like a comeback arc for some of these characters. Like they introduce for like an episode or two, and then they're like, "Oh no, this is too difficult. I gotta run," kind of thing. My career is over.
Mm.
That'd be
Um.
kind of a cool concept too.
Yeah. Really quick context, by the way. It's only we're only talking about season 1 and 2, by the way, because we only watched up to season 1 and 2. We wanted to put this out because one, there's a lot of stuff in season 1 and 2 already. Two, also because of times constraint. Um, and so yeah, so we're only talking about the first two seasons. We don't know I kind of know what's beyond season 2. Saki has no idea, like legitimately zero idea what could be possibly beyond season 2. Um, but for me, honestly, it's almost kind of the same because I genuinely do not remember 90% of the things that happen after the events of season 2, anyways.
Hmm.
um, I only know like some general overarching themes and such, but yeah. And let's see. What do you think? I think this is something that also kind of tickles my fancy because, or kind of like interests me, is that so in this, I guess, setting where you're cooking of the lead and everything. Typically, even in any type of storytelling that has a protagonist and like usually antagonistic details, there's usually between those two, right? The protagonist and antagonist, or like the ideas, right? It's usually a clashing of ideas, and typically they are either mirrors or direct opposites of each other, right? And here in Shokugeki no Soma, we see pretty much the direct opposite, right? Soma, his whole life revolved around his family restaurant, right? Um, he's been cooking with his dad for what, 6, 7, no, yeah, 7 years or something like that. It was some insane number, right? His whole life is basically revolved around cooking in a restaurant, right? Um, in a very well respected family diner restaurant. And um, he comes into this elite school where these children starting from middle school, right? So, seventh grade and beyond, have been training in this culinary school because the way they do it is they have like kind of like that, same program type thing where it's like, I think they don't mention elementary, so we're not going to include that. But like middle schoolers typically take like a qualification exam, and they're still within that same body of name of high school, right? Which is Totsuki. So there's a Totsuki middle school and a Totsuki high school, right? And a lot of the people from Totsuki middle school go into high school because that's their intent and that's how the program is kind of designed. But they have spent 3 years in that elite school, basically as students of the culinary arts, and went into high school. And so Soma comes in and kind of like, just to be like, I guess, clear, he kind of shits on them for that kind of like upbringing, I guess. And he makes it very clear that in one of his statements, again, big spoiler, he says he doesn't plan on losing to people who's never served customers before. And I thought that was interesting because you would think that prior to him saying that, an elite cooking school would have people from who backgrounds of actual cooking places, right? Like similar to Soma, be more populous in that school. Turns out, no, it's the exact opposite. It's just people who kind of like almost like lab rats, right? People who've only been in the lab come out into the next stage of the lab. And here comes an outsider like Soma, kind of just be like, what are you even here for? You've never served a customer. I don't ever plan on losing to you. So I thought that was an interesting concept. What about you?
Yeah, it was kind of a good thing that happened, because then it'd be, I think, a little bit stale.
Mm-hmm.
Because every other, like, I guess, high schooler, like you said, they've only cooked in like a school setting, so they're just learning, but they've never had that real life experience that Soma has. Did that make sense how I said it? It sounded good
Yeah.
in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like he has like the actual, real life experience. He worked in his dad's restaurant or his family restaurant, and all the other students are literally just coming from another school going to another school.
Yeah.
So there's not much experience, so I kind of like his cockiness, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, yeah, I'm pretty much better than you guys because, I've worked in a restaurant. You guys haven't. Like, I've dealt with more situations than you have.
Mm-hmm.
And it does, you know, prove like he is better because he is in this school and they, give them like their challenges or whatever, he's like, oh yeah, this will be easy. This is just like another Tuesday or whatever, and everyone else is freaking out because they never had to deal with it yet.
Yeah.
So I thought that was good that they kind of brought that in to show two different sides of cooking, like the culinary school part where you just learn your skills, and then his is real life experience skills. So
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting because you eventually find out that um, you know, a lot of the elites in that school that he encounters, right, the ones who genuinely have school, are the people who've worked in restaurants or have worked in settings where they have real life experience. There is exception with one, and that's the Spice Dude, because I don't think I've ever seen him work in a restaurant. He was kind of brought up by a professor instead, so he's kind of like that one exception. But everyone else has pretty much a restaurant background, if you think about it.
true, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Because you kind of learn the backstory of a lot of the main characters, and yeah, they kind of actually do come from like restaurant type setting.
Yeah.
Now that I
Um,
think about it.
we'll just name the some of the characters like the Aldini brothers. They
Yeah,
come from
the
a Italian restaurant or trattoria or something like that. The common I believe it's translated like common people's food, whatever restaurant. Um,
yeah.
so they have experience there, right? Um,
Hmm.
and then Kuroba, I think that's his name, Kuroba, the guy who goes crazy with the bandana. Um,
Yeah.
Scandinavian dude's been working in a restaurant for his entire life essentially until he was brought into that school. Um, and that was a cutthroat place. Who else? Let me think. Even the this is heavy spoilers, dude. The copycat dude worked in a restaurant.
Yeah, for his dad, I
Yeah,
think.
his dad. Who else? Uh, that I can think of that was like pretty high up there. Um,
I don't know if wha- God Tongue girl. What's her name?
Edina.
Yeah, and is it her sister?
Oh, her cousin.
Her cousin. Her cousin. What about them? I don't remember.
So it's never shown that she worked in there, and I think it kind of shows because she lost horribly to Soma, in the bento episode because she didn't actually realize what the bento meant, and she just kind of just did a fancy sushi dinner.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
and which is kind of like the whole point of like, I think the whole point of the anime, or at least the intention from the anime, was that like a lot of these fancy techniques exist, a lot of these fancy, true scientifical like approaches exist, right? But if there is no actual practical use or practical realization in the actual real world, right? It's all for nothing, to be honest. Um, as we said, I'm forgetting her name already. I shouldn't have forgotten her name. But Alice. Her name is Alice, the cousin of Edina, the God Tongue.
Hmm.
She's all about gastronomy, right? That is a very real thing where they do like kind of like things that don't make sense. Um, and there has been some interesting culinary, I guess, advances because of that. They do exist. However, you don't see that anywhere in actual restaurants. You don't see that except for like certain techniques that actually do utilize certain, you know, molecular gastronomy, techniques.
Hmm.
But they aren't gonna be like the super fancy ones you see in like the type of people that pay like thousands and thousands of dollars for, because in the end, it's not practical, and two, honestly, comparing it to regular food, It's probably just like people are probably just gonna they would probably just prefer regular food most of the time. Um, and that was pretty much the whole thing about even Soma versus Alice is because he made a practical bento that was enjoyable for people to eating it, right?
Yeah.
And the bento is very common in the culture of Japan. Um, so you know, I think really the whole premise or the whole like thematics of this Shokugeki no Soma food war anime slash manga was common people food should never be looked down upon because it's common and it's everywhere because for good reason. People enjoy it. If it was not good, it would no longer be around.
I agree. Sorry, I was getting a drink of water.
Yeah, no problem. And so I thought it was really interesting because it does it in kind of like a subtle way. You don't really start realizing it until that whole, the whole episode of, gastronomy, Alice versus Soma, right? It's kind of subtle throughout, and then it really hammers it in once that episode happens.
Yeah, like her specialty, I guess, is a little bit, like you said, it's not really practical.
Yeah.
Like most people won't even like understand it to appreciate it, so they don't really care about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of shows even in the real world. There's not much about like the molecular gastronomy part in cooking. Like it's very niche, I would say.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And I think, as a concept as a whole, I really do appreciate Shokugeki no Soma. It is genuinely a really good concept, especially for its time. And it was only made better by, characters existing in the anime and manga, right? I think one of our favorite characters is Ishiki. And to remind you, Ishiki is one of the elite members. He's specifically the 7th seat.
Oh yeah.
Or no, he's the 7th seat. And he is what you call the senpai or older or the senior of Soma in his dorm. And that man is quite eccentric, at least to say. He's very interesting as a character overall, right? Because here's the thing about Shokugeki no Soma, as we said, storytelling is actually really done well, right? It's actually really captivating, and I think it really shows when we first meet Ishiki Senpai. He is this joyful, man who seems to be very eccentric in terms of like he gets half naked. That's literally his thing, right? He gets naked in an apron.
Yeah, that was interesting to me at first because I totally forgot about it.
Uh-huh.
And then later, there's again spoilers, but in season 2,
Uh-huh.
during like the autumn selection battles and stuff,
Uh-huh.
he's wearing clothes, and I'm like, that's just not right. I don't. It feels unnatural to see him in actual clothes.
I think you legitimately see him more with his naked apron or just being half naked more than him with having full clothes on.
Yeah, I think you do.
Which is I think is hilarious, right?
Yeah.
And he also is like a very outgoing man, right? So he's like very bright, and so that only adds to his like positive image that is like he's naked, but like you'll accept him, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you also accept him because he's good at what he does.
Yeah.
When he cooks.
And so that's shown because immediately, his first introduction, he's introduced and, they're having fun and everything. And then he's like, oh, let me go make something in a playful way, right? You're not suspecting a thing from him right now. You just think he's just one of those weird characters that happen to be in the same dorm as him. Turns out, no, he's really good at cooking. And it turns out he's one of the Elite 7. And the build up to that was pretty amazing. Do you remember the intimidating aura that he had?
Was it when he did the food challenge with Soma?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I remember that. It was like an unofficial one.
Yeah, just kind of like just a introduction to each other type thing.
Yeah.
And really, It's really interesting too because like this man is in a half naked apron. You would never think he's intimidating, but he's intimidating because you don't suspect him at all. And then he out of nowhere he comes in because you hear about this what's called the Elite 10, right? Um, and so I guess some context is that, or he comes out saying that he's part of the Elite 10, the seventh seed. And what the Elite 10 is, for more context, is 10 students who are the best of the best in the academy, and they work as an almost like a pseudo organization within the academy where they have equal power to the president himself of the school. They make decisions for the teachers even sometimes. They have more power than teachers. That's how strong they are, right? So, you're kind of being told like this is like a mystical group where they are truly the elite of elites. But here's the catch. You don't learn that until after Ishiki introduces himself as the 7th seat, right? Because all you hear about the Elite 10 is just in passing, and the only time you actually hear it is when when you meet Erina as a character, when Soma encounters Erina, the God Tongue. It's only mentioned. It's never explained. It's just mentioned that she's part of the Elite 10, and you're just like, well, what's the Elite 10? What is this, right? Is this kind of like, dumb Pokemon thing, instead of Elite 4, it's Elite 10. But...
Right.
And, the way Erina interacts with Soma, you kind of, like, subconsciously think, oh, the Elite 10 is nothing. They're kind of pushovers, right? It's like, Soma's going to do this easily. And, Soma claimed that he would take the number 1 spot in the Elite 10. And so you're like, oh, because he's the protagonist, he's not going to have that much of a struggle or something like that. It kind of, like, falsely leads you into it. Because, again, this isn't, like, they don't make it directly seem like the Elite 10 are pushovers. It just kind of... You kind of associate it because of the way, Erina interacts with Soma. And then comes around Ishiki, where he kind of just blasts away Soma with his cooking. And he's like, hello, I'm part of the Elite 10, the 7th seat. What will you show me with this cooking, right? And, it's amazing and everything. And then you start to get, like, kind of like the gravity of how good the Elite 10 is in terms of cooking. And then it's even revealed later on, even after that one of the other people looks at him and is talking to Ishiki, and he's like, you didn't even try. You just gave him the most safe dish you had.
Right, yeah. When he was trying to... I guess when he first cooked for them, yeah, it was just like something simple for him.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like anything like extravagant. It was just like, oh yeah, this is something basic I can do.
Yeah, I think it was like I forget exactly what fish it was, right? It might have been like trout, or something. And then it was like with spring cabbage puree. I remember it. And it was a very simple looking dish. But then when Soma ate it, literally his reaction was, it's heavenly. And so, if that made Soma say it's heavenly or it's too good, but that was Ishiki's safest dish, what does that, like, what on earth does that it mean for his actual true, like, efforts in his dish, right? So you're kind of left with, like, that amazement of, like, what is the Elite 10? And you end up meeting 3 of them, right? Ishiki Satoshi is, number 7, the seat 7. Nakiri Alice is seat 10, the God Tongue. And then, Aizen, I'm forgetting his last name, but Aizen, Tatsuya Aizen, I think it is.
He was like the business one, right?
Yeah, the business one, the 9th seat, right? And that dude is interesting too, because Shokugeki no Soma introduces a lot of interesting characters, genuinely interesting characters. Even if they're like kind of like, side characters that basically almost never show up, they're still interesting, right? Like the Don dude that we talked about. We fondly talked about. He basically only appears to be a gag character, right? But he's still kind of interesting. The fact that he leads this club for Don, the food Don, right? Donburi, and his hair is kind of magical in some way.
Dude, his hair, man.
His pompadour hair, it's majestic but also magical. But yeah, so we get introduced to a side character. I just forgot who else I was going to talk about. That's crazy. Aizen, right? He's part of the Elite 10. He's really interesting because, again, you're introduced to Ishiki and Nakiri Alice, who are clearly both competent cooks. It's been shown that they're very good at cooking, right? And then Aizen comes around and you're like, oh, well, what does he do, right? And he basically says, I am not a cook. I
Yeah.
have far different interests in that. And, he makes it very clear that he is the one that chefs bow down to, right? The businessman. He is the businessman. And that's interesting because he's in the Elite 10. And yet, he's not focused on cooking, right? I thought that was really interesting.
It is interesting because it brings out the side of cooking or restaurants and cook is not just about the food.
Yeah.
It's about business too,
Yeah.
running a business, and that's his specialty, which was very interesting because you expect everyone to be like, "Oh, like the great, like a great chef in this kind of cooking or in this," but no, he's just like, "Not, I'm not a chef, but I'm good at other things."
Yeah. And he
And
says
so that,
he says he has his sight set higher than that.
yeah, which is an interesting, I guess, twist
Uh-huh.
to have in there
Yeah.
as especially as an elite 10 seat
Yeah.
person.
Um and it turns out we kind of speculated later on, right? He actually might be a pretty damn good cook because what happened later is because I think this was after the school trip, right? Um and the school trip from hell happened, and then this happens where he's like, "Oh, congratulations, you're selected for the autumn selection, right?" Um,
Hmm.
this implies that because Aizen is a second year, right? He's not a first year; he's a second year. This implies that he went to the school camp of hell because Ishiki also had to go there. He wasn't exempt from it, and it also Nakiri Atlas had to go, even though despite being part of the Elite 10.
Right, because they were first years.
Yeah. So Aizen got through it, and clearly that, you know, school camp from hell is a legit thing. He got through it. So there's a very that's that subtle implication that he's actually a good cook. He just doesn't think that he's a cook at all. So what does that mean? We still haven't found out yet because it's only been 2 seasons. But it's still a very interesting thing where he's potentially very good at cooking, but he just does not care about that.
That's a good point, actually. I didn't even think of that. That since he is a second year, he did have to get through that camp. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, he made it through, so he has to be a good cook on some degree.
Yeah. Um and it's not like the school camp is like a normal school camp. Again, it's a school camp from hell. It's because the alumni from all the Totogeki graduates come and like judge them. So they're the elite of the elite, and so you could fail and just get kicked out mid camp, and you're expelled from the school. Um,
Yeah, you're done.
yeah, you're done. And so he's made, and the school. It seems like the school camp is from hell. Like 50 servings of food within 1 hour. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Um,
Even for like normal standards, that's a lot.
yeah. So, and like Soma being the restaurant boy he is, does it really easily because he has experience, practical experience in a diner, right? But
Hmm.
other students are clearly shown like struggling like hell to even keep up because they're not used to it.
Yeah, they know how to cook, but they don't know how to do the restaurant part of it, like keep up with the speed of things. They know how to make good food, but you also, for those challenges, you have to have speed
Yeah,
and
and
time management too. Really good time management.
yeah, and later on in season 2, this clearly showed like there's a direct like scene for this kind of stuff too. Do you remember
Which one?
when Soma works together with Edina's
Oh
uh
yes.
yeah,
The what are those
the
called?
assistant.
Yeah, what was that challenge thing called he had to get through?
Oh, what's it called? It's the French word for it's a French word. I remember that. Sagittaire.
Something like that. Yeah. But yeah, those challenges they send, their students that, have made it so far into real world situations. So yeah, he definitely shined in that.
Yeah. Oh, it's called the Stagiare. Obviously,
That's right. Stagia. Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
yeah. Obviously, I'm butchering the pronunciation really badly because it's in French. Um, but that's how we heard it because Japanese people pronouncing the way they see it. So I mean, it's that that's that. But you know, it's really interesting because it boils down back to I guess almost like kind of like realistic, I guess, things in a sense, despite it being very unrealistic at the same time. I think that's the beauty of anime. It could be unrealistic but also realistic at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the best part is, we're gonna have to wrap this up soon, but like I think the best part about so Shokugeki no Soma is that Soma isn't portrayed as some genius. He's not a genius. Um, he's just as one person has called him the biggest sore loser. Um, and what that means is that Soma has lost to like again he's worked in his family diner. It's mainly him and his dad, and only him and his dad. And his dad is revealed later on to be a very, very interesting chef. But I guess we'll save that for people who do end up watching the anime. But turns out his dad has seriously battled him in food, like competition, for the entirety of Soma's cooking career, and Soma has lost basically 400 anything 90 times in a row.
490 something, yeah.
Yeah, and Soma didn't just take those losses and wallow in despair or whatever. He learned from them and applied those failures into his new cooking, And it's been shown over and over that like every time he's failed in something, he like kind of learns from it, or he takes past experiences and then implements them in his new cooking dishes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like kind of like the beauty of it, right? Is that he's not shown to be some natural genius. He's not shown to be some like insanely gifted person. He's just a dude who's kind of lost like constantly to the point and like learned. He's just learned. He works hard and learns.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. And I do want to add one thing before we close, so I'll leave it till the end though.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting or the best part is that like what's it called? A lot of the shows, like you see Soma so unfazed by a lot of things, is because he's always been in that situation where he can't afford to think about what's next after losing, because he's already know what it's like to lose. And then you see a lot of students go through the dilemma, right? A lot of side students going like, they're under so much pressure because they're in a situation where they can lose and they think it's the end of the world when it's not.
That's just part of life.
Yeah. So I think it's it's a really like in a weird way, right? A beautifully like made story for at least the first 2 seasons. So now that we're gonna have to wrap up, what would you like to say, Saki?
Just a quick little thing. What was like your favorite scene out of the first 2 seasons?
If I think genuinely my favorite scene was probably when Soma challenged, that man to a Shokugeki when he was pissed off.
Which is that man?
The French dude.
Oh, in the middle of
Yeah, middle of the first season.
the camp, from in the middle of that camp.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil his name because he is kind of a very interesting character too. I don't want to talk too much about him because again, I think he was an also interesting character for you too because you kind of criticized him, but he kind of made a turnaround.
Yeah, I was kind of, I won't speak too much about it, but I was kind of happy that they did that with his character.
Yeah. But I was like, that was probably my favorite because it was just like, holy shit,
Yeah. Didn't expect that.
That's probably my favorite, and then my second favorite in at least the first 2 seasons was when Ishiki introduces himself.
Ah, yes, that's always a classic.
That's like a true turning point, another true turning point of like, whoa, this is different than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
For me, it's gonna be, you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, that I see that, but it's nothing to do with like, really. It's one character. It's the I guess the owner Totsuki, the old guy, really tough old guy.
Senzaiman. I think that's his name. Give me a moment. I think his name is Senzaiman, but it's Sen something. Um,
Anyway, so it's that guy. That's this scene. It was one of the later episodes in season 2.
mm-hmm.
It was during the autumn selection finale, I think.
Oh,
And I think you know where I'm going with this.
yeah.
And so he ate Soma's food, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, like he's still like in his clothing. What happened?" And then someone's like, "Wait, wait, wait! There's a part 2 to my dish." And he does the part 2, and the dude takes a bite, and his clothes just explode off of him. I think that was probably the greatest scene ever, because in a couple minutes before that, you're like, "Uh-oh, he's definitely lost. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way." And then he takes a bite, and just all you hear is poof, and you just see his clothes exploding off. I thought that was the greatest thing ever.
And for those of you who've gotten to this point of our, dumb rambling, yeah, that man has a quirk where if the food is really good, his clothes explode. Or no, not explode. He strips.
Yeah, he basically strips, but the fact, because I was expecting him to like, strip, quote unquote,
Yeah, yeah.
but no, it exploded. Floated off the person, which was great.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, I can see why that's your favorite scene. I definitely think that was one of the best ones too.
Because it caught me off guard. I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah.
That's why I think it was one of the greatest.
Yeah. Ah. Well, to wrap this up, I guess I would say for sure give Shokugeki, whoever hasn't watched it before, and hopefully you're not that spoiled by it. Do give
Or,
Shokugeki. Uh-huh.
I was gonna say, or if you even have watched it, give it another rewatch.
Yeah. And then consider it from a story perspective, like me and Saki have. Um, give it a watch for at least the first 2 seasons. We don't know how 3 through 5 is. It could be a dumpster fire for all we know, But I think it's just a genuinely good and interesting concept that is very entertaining. For most people, kids should not be watching it, but
Or parental supervision, please.
yeah, parental supervision where they can close your eyes. uh, so yeah, give it a watch. So yeah, that's all I could say. So we're gonna have to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, you know, if you did listen to this episode this entire way. So I'll end it here. I'm Jin,
And I'm Saki.
and this is the Casuals, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.